Hello everybody.
Next up we play host to Nottingham Forest. It's back to a post-European Sunday for us with kick-off at 2 p.m. The C2C trains between Barking and Liverpool Street won't be running till after midday due to engineering works, so factor that into your lunchtime pint calculations. So, Forest then. Well, they're having a much better time of things this season than they did last time around. Though, like last week's opponents, they would have featured in my dad's selections on the old Littlewoods treble chance. Perm any 8 from 10, 22.5p and your photo taken with Eutha Joyce as you pick up your oversized cardboard cheque for £500,000. Those are the days. Not that we ever won, of course. I digress. So far this season, Forest have won 3, drawn 4 and lost 4 of the 11 played so far. This has given them 13 points, leaving them in what for them is nosebleed territory of 13th place. That's a point and a place behind us. A cursory look at last week's somewhat surprising win over Villa showed that the victory owed much to manager Cooper's brave decision to replace the hitherto first-choice keeper Turner with summer signing Vlachodimos, he said carefully, who turned in a man-of-the-match performance as Villa wasted chance after chance. Vlachodimos, it says here, according to Daisy, was one of 10 summer permanent signings this season. That's fewer than last season perhaps, but still quite a lot when you factor in an additional 4 loan signings as well. Of course, on the other side of the ledger, 24 players left either permanently or out on loan, some, as we have seen, ending up at Thursday's opponents Olympiacos, with whom they share an owner, who will therefore have saved himself some air miles over the course of this week. The first signing was simply a conversion into a permanent deal of the loan of Chris Wood from Newcastle. It was always an odd signing for the Magpies, being as it was one of the first signings made with the petrodollars supplied by their new owners. Imagine that, you've got the whole resources of one of the richest nations in the world behind you, and your first thought is, I must sign a journeyman Kiwi of limited ability. Of course, West Ham United does act as some form of catnip to such players, who always seem to score against us and pretty much nobody else. See Mopé last week, for example. Wood is a doubt this weekend, however, and whilst it's this column's policy never to wish injury on any player, no matter how annoying they are, might we respectfully suggest that this time one more week of recovery would be most beneficial for Wood? Nigerian international fullback Ola Aina came in on a free, having been released by Torino. He did spend last season on loan at Fulham, having made over 100 appearances for the Italians, and the deal that took him to Craven Cottage did contain an option to buy. However, that option wasn't exercised, and Aina pitched up to sign for Forest on a 1-year deal. Southwark-born, he started his career at Chelsea, becoming part of their loan stock. He was capped at all England levels up to under 20 before switching allegiance to Nigeria, for whom he's now got over 30 full caps. They spent £15 million, bringing in Anthony Elanga from Manchester United. Swedish-born to Cameroonian parents, his dad played for Malmo back in the day, he was eligible for either of those countries, plus through residence England. He elected instead to play for the Swedes, who I will never ever forget or forgive for bloody ABBA. We were supposed to have expressed an interest in Brazilian central defender Murillo. In the end, Forest shelled out €12 million, rising with add-ons to €15 million for the uncapped defender, who arrived on these shores with only 13 senior league matches to his name. Those work permit discussions must have been quite interesting then. A few seasons ago, Callum Hudson-Odoi was being pursued vehemently by Bayern Munich. Not sure what's happened in the interim period, but he spent last season on loan at Bayer Leverkusen, where he made 21 appearances. With no further interest from the Germans, and with first-team football a must if he wanted to add to his 3 England caps, he elected to join Forest for a fee of £3 million, to which £2 million are likely to be added in add-ons. Now, I'm of an age where I can remember Forest when they were often mentioned in the same sentence as Bayern Munich. It's a bit less so these days. Unless, of course, that sentence commences with the words, I can remember back in the day when... ... Daisy reminds me that Hudson-Odoi's dad has an entry into the Preview Percy book of quite splendid names in association football, his given name being Bismarck. Of the loan signings, the most notable is probably former Liverpool striker Divock Origi, another not particularly great player who memory suggests always scores against us, though neither Daisy nor I can be bothered to dive into the records to verify that this is actually the case. On the fitness front, they have a number of doubts. Hudson-Odoi is definitely out. Felipe, Origi, Montiel and Wood are all looking at late fitness tests, with the latter three looking all slightly more likely to feature at some stage. Oh, enough of them, and let's move on to the wild and wacky world of association football. It's difficult to know where most laughs were to be found in Europe this week. Manchester United's implosion from 2-0 up was being blamed on Rashford's sending off, which in somewhat typical British media style was being debated as if the decision was somehow dubious. It wasn't. Nobody wanted to ask the question of the pundits as to whether they would have wanted a red card had Rashford been on the receiving end. Nobody asked because we all knew the answer, I suspect. Then there was, of course, Klopp, who was moaning again that his press conference had to take place within earshot of celebrating Toulouse supporters. Well, Jurgen, it was like this. They couldn't find any celebrating Scousers. I haven't actually seen a press conference from the Under-17 World Cup. However, I'd be willing to bet that the New Caledonian Under-17 head coach handled any press with infinitely more dignity than Klopp, despite his team being beaten 10-0 by England. This will give the New Caledonians a bit of an uphill task to get out of the group in the Indonesian-based tournament. And so to us. Before I move on to the events of Thursday night, I've got a few more words concerning Brentford. Well, not the match, but, well, sort of. The match being the last home game before Remembrance Sunday, they had a short ceremony of remembrance. Now, I appreciate that for many of these occasions, it's become a modern thing to mark the occasions with applause in the continental manner, and this is what happened at Brentford. However, I don't know, my personal feeling is that if ever a ceremony were worthy of silence, it's the November Remembrance one. Personally, I find that the silence gives me time to reflect on the past sacrifices made, and the whole thing is quite moving in a way that, well, applause simply can't emulate. So, on Sunday, whatever happens, I'll be being silent, and hopefully the powers that be will have arranged things in that manner for our game. And so to Thursday then. Now, one of the things about being an award-winning purveyor of previews is that one occasionally dips one's toes into the murky waters of social media. Now, if you hadn't seen the match and based your impression of the match purely on what people were saying on the internet, you'd have been forgiven for thinking that it had been a bit of a snooze fest that we were lucky to get away with winning. I'll admit it wasn't exactly a thriller minute, but it was an absorbing clash between a team that needed the win for multiple reasons and a team that would have been quite happy with a draw. Patience was always going to be a virtue against a team whose attacking intentions were largely an afterthought confined to the closing minutes. I thought we were the better team throughout, and the post being hit notwithstanding at the end, we created much the better chances. Ultimately, I thought we were the better side who deserved the win, no matter how much we had to grind it out. So take that, Internet. We also had to contend with Mr. Jug, an official who put one in mind of 1970s bent referee Rudy Glockner, who in turn acted as a template for the likes of Thomas and Dean. It was as if Mr. Jug had wanted to set up his own tribute act to the late and definitely not missed East German official. On the injury front, we were missing Zuma the other night, and his troublesome knee still makes him a doubt for this one, though the extra day may be of help. Otherwise, the squad seems to have survived the travails of Thursday night. So, on to the prediction then. We seem to have gotten into a habit of shedding points after a Thursday night, so perhaps we should ask the authorities in charge of the game, i.e. Sky, if we can play all our matches on a Thursday. However, I'm actually a bit more optimistic about this one. They still don't travel well. The one win on the road coming this season at Chelsea, which doesn't really count these days. So the £2.50 I was going to put on the New Caledonian team getting out of their group will instead be placed with Mr. Winston on a wager for us to win the match 2-1. Enjoy the game.